Collected Essays by Valerie Lynn Stevens. Matrix, a Unitary Transformation. Love floods the desiccant crevices of the atrophic heart, and the soul is once more saturated with the superincumbent, almost unbearable weight of true freedom and life once more. And how we always feel so foolish when we realize just how much we've missed fearing and shutting it out. But we can also now see just how much it has missed and needed us. For this is a raison d'etre, intractably interdependent. And it's almost as if all the times we were without love never really existed at all, but were perhaps spurious projections to keep us preoccupied until we returned back to our true home. And what faithfully prodigal sons and daughters we all are, indeed. Yet perhaps any world outside of the matrix of love is never our true dwelling place at all, although these other worlds are ever present, nevertheless. But this two worlds apart dialectic persists only when we resist them, or attempt to fully inhabit both. For the human entity cannot serve two antithetical masters, and neither can the body, spirit, or the mind. And hence the age-old philosophical inquiry of what is real, the objective consensual phenomena of a world of sharply demarcated logic and linearity, or that world perceived through the sentient organs of intuition and subjectivity. For we are told that both exist, but that only one is relevant. And furthermore, it seems to me that the state in which we most deeply connect with love is anything but linear, disaffective, and impersonal. Yet there are no current provisions made for metaphysically employed scientists, and love hurts just as much, if not perhaps more, than any physical malady or affliction, even as it soothes and satiates. Furthermore, per Eastern thought, perhaps our universe cannot exist without the presence of human consciousness itself. But to play upon the philosophical cliché, if no one was in a forest where a tree fell, wouldn't someone still see it, smell it, taste it, feel it, hear it, even but within their own mind's eye? For even one consciousness alone, even removed from the premise of classical empiricist observation, is capable of a wondrous infinitude of imagination and dynamism with which to construct any world of its choosing. And this is perhaps the ultimate act of love, creation, the acknowledgement of and regard for beingness, the pure desire to be alive and sensing and sharing of one's gifts with our fellow human kindred. The process being, in and of itself, the product. Or rather, I like to think of the evaluation of the very act of being and cogitating lying not so much within the answers one is seeking, but within the edification process of inquiry itself. Indeed, being authentically and fully who one is, actively and responsibly engaged with the world itself, is, in some sense, perhaps the ultimate act of love, as well as a variation of ordinary heroism. Of course, all philosophers have pondered upon the concept of the superior virtue and nobility to be found in and gleaned from chaos, and an oppositional striving against that which is comfortably conformant and quotidian, as in the classically epic Rousseau-esque image of the noble savage. For an escapist philosophy can be very seductive indeed, insofar as it absolves people of any authentic engagement with life, and relieves one conveniently of any real accountability for one's actions or even one's sins of omission, if this be the case. I suppose this can be referred to as a kind of spiritual entropy, a force which human individuals are constantly in tug of war with. Yet many physicists specify that what we generally regard as chaos is order, just order of an infinite complexity. In other words, human consciousness is still too myopic in its vision and limited in its scope to be able to fully see things as they truly are, beneath the macroscopic perspective we are socially engineered to place our faith within. In finale, I think that we are all continually learning that the purpose of this existence, the existence of paradox and seeming disunity, perceived to be at work throughout the universe, is not necessarily aimed to merely bewilder or to inflict petty torment, but to teach and hone the soul towards its fullest possible spiritual evolution and actualization. In other words, strife is best viewed upon as an evolutionary tool of a psycho-spiritual means, to borrow a phrase coined by Carl Gustav Jung. And it is also perfectly fine to simplify things for ourselves when need be as well. Perhaps it all exists merely for the sake of existing. Perhaps it just is because it is the way that it was created to be. And perhaps this Heraclitean and also Taoist wisdom in and of itself contains the key to all heavenly portals. All is perfect exactly as it is. And perhaps all that evil is that which manifests as an interference with the natural design and course of all things. For even life and death cavort in celebration and diplomacy beyond what we can often fully grasp with our myopic mind's eye. In the end, the only danger perhaps does lie only within each and every individual's heart, mind, and attendant will. And hopefully, someday, we will each come to accept this verity with finality. Until then, we must contend with the classically bifurcate mind and heart as we learn to more efficaciously navigate the labyrinthine, hazardous laboratory of a kind of existential quantum mechanics, which also follows its own uncertainty principle, while keeping lucidly within our soul's mind's eye both a prescience and a sentience towards the highest and noblest objectives of our fullest potential as a humanity. And if we manage this experiment with sufficient reverence and competence, will perhaps we come to the place where, at last, there will be no more collapses of any wave functions to tediously measure and anticipate, no more photons or other assorted matters to let propagate in isolation, or rather isolate in vacuous propagation, no more Schrodinger's cats to diligently care for, no more quantum hypotheses to perplex and dizzy ourselves with, no more constants to establish. Yes, perhaps someday we will learn how to just live and love within the universe we've already got, within the wondrous world we already know and have been gifted with. But most of all, perhaps we will finally someday come to see that all of our burning and toiling questions were always and already fully answered.